was staying in a warehouse near the Pulaski Bridge in Greenpoint in Brooklyn. The Delphonics were overflowing from Hot 97. Deep soul, the kind of soul that blows cold as cold New York in December. This would only happen once. We had no hot heat, no running water. But earlier, we had been discussing Glissant for Norn and Breton, ruminating upon Ted Jones and Bob Kaufman before heading into the village. And James, he was the greatest dancer in the club that night. I had to stop to watch him spin when he threw his hands up and twirled, voguing into something ecstatic. As the sweat kept dripping from the walls of the basement, he threw his shirt open to Archie Bell and the drums. He threw his head back, the summer salt in his skin. The floor upstairs was different. It was all orange haze and house. More mellow the tempo, more easy on the knees. It was cool. That is until a tall black and white dog entered the dance. It had walked all the way from some dirt skid village in Trinidad to New York, where it walked onto the dance floor, wagging its tail to bite them on the ankle, to bite them on the knee, bite them while they're dancing, to bite them. Place. The dog busts a laugh in the DJ face. The dog threw a buckle in the people dance. The dog press a button and the DJ jump. And then to stand at the door holding a razor blade rubbed with garlic, so people running out wouldn't know they get cut when they're running out and get cut stupid. And when I told James that he was a dancer with hips of precision, that he could move, he left and he clicked his heels on St. Mark's Place. That's what they say, he said. That's what they said. DJ jumped. Threw his shirt open to Archie Bell and the Drells. He threw his head back, summer salt in his skin. We had been discussing Ted Jones and Bob Kaufman. iconic. We were tremendous. Grooving through the downfalls and the storms. Suzanne had seen the chrome towers of the spirit world. She had moved through each room in darkness like an illicit vapor. She had heard the sorrowful blues of the South, the narcotic rumble of its lowest frequencies. She had stepped with bare feet upon the wooden floor, and cold, it was cold, it was cold. She had bent her head back to stare at the impossible back of night. But the door to heaven would not open, horror upon horror. She wept hard and punctured the fabric of the sky. Lid was torn out of momentum, was sudden burst of bone and feathers with wings stretching. She had broken to water upon the banks of an inconsolable river. Her lungs were full of grapes. She had crept with the skin of vipers through moss and silt. Cool, it was cold and cool in the underbush after the flood. She had opened every window in the house and turned each photo around. There was morning, there was music in the morning. There was music in the two-step out morning. Someone humming in the street, piercing the stillness where light leaped in. She stood on the liminal gap between her shadow and her reflection, agonizing upon her own death. In Stockholm, upon that ship of sound, she had again met the saxophonist, and she had for the first time listened carefully to the truncated beauty of his obligatos and was spirited away and spread open to possibility. But she did not see his dark and melancholy eye upon her over the reed. He saw the naked flesh of her neck, the white beads of the necklace, of glass of beads of insect bone, her shoulders, the bones of her sternum, the sex of her mouth. That night, he would examine each limb by limb by limb. He would roll his tongue along her skin. In the morning, the hills seemed to lung them both to breath. He sat naked at the edge of the bed with the horn hung between his legs. The melody he had composed held several smooth corners, notes of Don Bias, hints of Turrentines, I Told Jesus, Blue Suzanne. She listened as if it was the last song sung in heaven, and then they embraced. The wooden louvers rattled in the rugged dawn. The swimming pool in the courtyard below was the deepest blue and barren within the fading summer light. transposition of space, in which the same rain that irrigates a field may circulate, return again to irrigate the valley, return again as rain, as light in a dream in which we are walking streets which lean at degrees, searching for the home we left behind. Within the transposition of space, the sky the same, the sun the same, the stars remain. But pity the immigrant who loses more than collective faith. Transformed by distance, we scandalize our names. Streets we walked and left behind seem to reappear here in this new, distant space. In cities in which we lose ourselves, in cities in which we may find the spiritual, which are sacred spaces in and of themselves, spatial excesses of memory and forgetting. I read a poem once in which the poet was flying a kite in Kensington Gardens, in the same wind that blew from the wetlands of Guyana, in the same sun that shone from Bridgetown, Barbados, the tail still tangled in the beams of a house of an old estate. And I have become more Caribbean here than when I fell asleep in the arms of an orange tree. Transposition of space, in which one place becomes another. Is that London? Or is that the Western Main Road in St. James in Port of Spain? Or the road near the biscuit factory and its cinnamon air transposed to a street elsewhere? Or how an island looks familiar from across a river? Surely this retention is the topography of loss and geography. Translocation of space-time as a meditation on loss, beloved space. I know roads I drove along saying, this happened here, that happened there. I know heat stays in the body. I know the Dutch door and the blue paint, which was broken. But this place existed as a mirage and dance of glimpses of post-colonial imaginings. London was not real. It was impressionist. The grey stone of a Doric pillar, high contrast, black and white, set against the static of the sky, Arthurian fog rising to my knees. What light could exist in the promise of rain? A road, but the depth of field is shallow, unfurl of white and spume curling into the mind, and from the left of this frame a cart, a wooden bed, old hell to carry sugarcane or cocoa, where the tray is laden down with cargo until it disappears into the white foam of history. And then the old Calypsonian is singing a song born long before Windrush, born before Aunt Agnes even reached here in London in the very early 70s, and before Uncle Harry come to study civil planning. Caribbean folk was here, strolling down Piccadilly, singing some old suit and tie song about the wonders of empire, when the empire was part of the Caribbean, or at least a part of our consciousness. And I I came to you that night, connecting in a gap of time. So long memoried now that we could hardly remember how we met or what was said. We were eternal. We went walking that night, hallucinating on LSD in the back roads of Grimsby Park, lilting in the moonlight as the sky seemed to expand and rise further and nearer with each breath. How even in the darkness we felt safe and warm. It was summer. The summer I spent writing poems on Hornsey Road, transposing time into space. Transposition of space. The city had disappeared. Nothing remained, just hills of barren earth and valleys as far as visible. It seemed to have come upon us swiftly, like a storm in the night. And now ships were leaving, and high upon the hills, I could see the smoke rise. Dry wood. I'm ready now to step through the eye of this vortex, fixing a mask, a wooden helmet, bay leaf skull plate, and shake to loose them lazy bones and put bells on this bamboo saxophone. Mama, she whispered me a word to protect me on this star flight. 7 letter X, give me strength. My replace beads of siderite and OB seed and psychic nut in a glass. Marigold yellow for spirit force. Magnet root for clandestine theological exegesis. She cracked bergamot and yang yang oil and a pale blue halo begin to buzz, absorbing and absolving, becoming a transparent mirror, transmuting and receiving in a synapse like spirit bass, walking 5-note natural scales and liquid tonic triplet tones and flatted fifths that creep in every slip of time in this room with a dense scope of feeling. A feeling that rises through the palm branch roof to some apex of umbilical light where the sun sketched its arm. Blue has no skeleton, carambola, no shell, calling or in flesh. Indistinct, indistinct, indistinct. The source of this light is high above hills, indistinct. A hovering something shifting improbable angles on the sky limb. It seems to transverse parallax and tremor in the stiff breeze, to shiver in the yellow pui tree. And when Mara falls, she collapses between breast and shoulder, and her water tumbles, and her kidney fails, and she falls, spinning, spinning, spinning. Mother Mara, brown the hue of sunburnt clay, her word ablaze with liquid text, her eyes with ancient suns. Woman of the village consulted her for the moon. Even Loa sought the solace of her brow. She blessed blades and bows and brewed herbal fetishes, and in exchange the conqueros bring her baskets of ripe corn, wild coffee, saviku seed. They make sure her ground was pressed flat, and they gave her their secrets for safekeeping. Their children call her Maman of many names. She is the great goddess whose eyes shine like stars. Maye Maya Mara Ash Ma Isis. Mother Mara who sleeps in the sky but remembers all our names. Sun Ra was on the ark. Prince Nico Mbaga, he was on the ark. So was Art Taylor and Sonny Simmons and Bessie Smith and Duke, all on the ark. And Joe Tex and Geraldine Connor and Giuseppe Logan, even Roaring Lion and Aunt Bunny were abdominally on the ark. The original DeFosto was also on the ark. Beat rivers of song upon the Omalay drum, just a cutlass carpenter, no skill with timber, four-eyed fish were on the ark. Who playing war and frayed blood? Who playing mass and frayed powder? Who prevaricate and ruse, strewing holy powder as ritual upon the ark, but don't want ink or water to touch their clothes? Who else was on the ark? Max Roach was on the ark, and Ras Shorty I, and Eric Dolphy, and Amiri Baraka, and Ras Elibank, and Harry Belafonte. Them was high upon the boat. He was on the ark. He was on the boat. Mama drum, you say you're coming to come, but you never reach as far as the leader house. You never hear his sword off, speaker drum, boomed up, roots all around the village. Bachelor life. And then you hear he bullying 3 women in the congregation, and the shepherd raising crook stick and tapping his foot when the hymns swing. But he's suffering in silence, because he wondering if while he in church, rocking on his heels, his woman horning him with leader Jim when night come and he need a see a man to prophesy or tack back and catch them in slack. But his faith was firm. Every Sunday he in church, he was on the ark in Bro. Beatty was on the ark. Mong and Vino in pajamas, the wild moon, fever in his throat. Performance poet and stand-up comic boat were on the boat. And the ark was full, but more was to come, and they coming still. Ethel Waters was on the ark, singing Creole gold. Octavia Butler, hip good, up upon this boat. Eric Eustace Williams, dead and living same time, was also wrapped in kente. Fats Waller, Courtney Jones, and Winifred Atwell, Lennox Raphael, even Gang Gang Sarah, blown from Guinea to Lokoto, Tobago, who had climbed a great silk cotton tree with intention to fly back to Africa, but who fell to stony death because she had eaten salt. Then Darkest How and the mighty Spoiler, the mighty Terror and the mighty Zandoli, and proper soft man strewing vitamins down his throat. Zando alive, living among the dead, still crapping war around sick man head. Then Ira Sanders reach with Yusuf Latif. Earl Lovelace laugh. We see Eric Roach reach on the ark, his book of poems still warm under his arm. And when the ark had 2 days to go before it reached Southampton, here come Brother Resistance, here come Carl the Voice, here come Benjamin Zephaniah, here come John LaRose, here come Charles Mingus, here come Lord Kitchen on his way back from New York in 1957, here come Paul Rosen, here come Beryl McBurney, even Olive Wolf rode upon that boat. This was the year that the great bandit graduated from bandit school and roughed 40,000 men in San Fernando. When the river washed down from the million hills and cleansed the city, and who had drowned, badly waterlogged, and who had died, badly wounded, and the great bandit came down with his escort and chariot to survey the land. And they found poor black folk had hidden in holes in the earth, and in barrels sealed shut with likely sap from the breadfruit tree. But the poets were wise and hid in the trees and were never found. And the bandit rode on. And the houses of dukes and spooks and prime ministers were burned to the ground. And all around the embassy route, those grand facades of colonial times were volcanically cast to ash and plundered. And then the bandit moved west, searching for that gold-throated woman who, after making disco love to him one morning, ventured him up to the hills overlooking the city, behind the bridge and quarry, and show him his own city. And he never imagined his own island as a map. Its grids and ley lines, the white fume foaming at the lips of the coast. Years hence, the bandit went knocking at discotheque doors, but the woman was gone. She was upon the ark, anointed with olive oil and secret colors. Auntie Ursula was on the ark, my cousin Peter Lezama, then Dominique Gamor, as was Milton Cardona and Rosetta Tharpe and Odetta, C.L.R. James, the poets Gillen Kane and Giboyega Udu Banjo. But not Kemal Braithwaite. He was not on the ark. Instead, Baba, the great teacher, had long since evaporated into air, into language, into sound, into the very sex fruit of poetry. And the ark drove up to Bristol, Brixton, Birmingham, Leeds, and Manchester too. It swooned into New York, Boston and Chicago, New Orleans, see it too. Yeah. And then it swing down to Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, Suriname, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Guyana. Remember, this ark respects no boundaries or Archimedes. It moves like a crown on a drafts board, any damn way it chooses. Look at Pastor Aruba, Trinidad, Grenada. Look at move up the Orinoco River, and it never wear no necktie yet. St. Lucia get it. Bermuda see it too. It come from the southern Caribbean all the way up to Pascagoula Bay. I saw the brother Yusuf Ahmed on the boat.
Don't forget me.
Even Stephen Samuel Gordon,
As they lay me to
brother.
rest, let this be
He was on the
a
boat,
moment
blowing
of
the big
transit.
a bang.
Beauty anticipates the truth, extending value beyond the current state. Let this be
bird and I, above an ocean of tigers. You to your cage, by increments, by measures. Your bird and I, in perilous air but flying. If I did or did not, I may show you a wider geography. I may act as if I might. I may. Maybe I have eteric sight. Perhaps I compose unwritten poems with no words and no meaning. Perhaps I was a water bearer in a past life, with a dream scroll unraveling with perfect pitch, with all intention to disappear as air, to write with no theory of sound beyond the air. Your bird and I, and our chemicals of surprise, our sex of heat and suspense, invisible eyes in arenas of dexterity, in arenas of the physical arenas of intimate textology, as blushing heat as the sharp leaf of cane. That night I encountered a ghost along a leaning road, encountered its black heart, remains wounded, torn like in a shallow river, like our true names, which remain on the riverbed of some blood-soaked land, remains a moth, pinioned upon breath. Your bird and I, in the notion of your cage, in the manner of our lives, by increments and measures, in perilous waters and sea shanties and coefficients, by flight or candles played, to be spun upon your axis is surely to be flying. to move the rain from the balcony, when suddenly the night came in. I walked on the outside edge, behind the balustrade was sudden death blow below. I went back into that same apartment where our first daughter was born, but everything felt different. Someone had set himself up as DJ by moving my amp and amplitude, spinning overused tunes from old blues dance and country weddings. Baron Samedi with the lamb's bread skank. Blue rockers. I asked who built this station, this system, this sound. With which machine does the rhythm run? Selector please, who bring echo chamber to stutter over my 2-3 tune and radiogram.
I started a plug wire one time.
Make the dancers have to sit and wait in Hessian rugs and wait until I unravel this mess of wires, until the rain stops and the music starts again. The star explodes. I'm on a mountain of fire, almost touching the sky. I am all in black, tall hat and cane, upon a mountain of perched surprisingly high upon this mountain of fire. I am in the swaddling of dust, smoking a pipe.
In the dance of the living room, the old quartet.
Play them the cool shiver, the old soft bone. There was that hall, where the quartet first played, where glass was burst and scattered, where the reeds split like a forked tongue, like a bell ringing twice in a chapel hidden bush. Gust of the sea had caught his tongue. Give them the whirl and the howl and the salt upon it, bitter with the blight of white lice on the leaves. Shouldn't all these things emerge from the horn, bright as the sun? And Saturday night in his bachelor's room, Baron Samedi in his iron-sharp suit,
standing solid in the edges like James,
stolid in the heel like Brown, cold in the flick and flare, leaning in to shake a hand while looking like the back of some Mighty Sparrow album from 1969. some dry bone
The Cab Calloway,
strung out.
whip-like. But then we
Rise up that night. Then we sit down after 4 choruses. Then we all dream of Dolphy while he played his horn in the atrium of a seaside hotel. And when he blew
didn't he growl?
like a wound in newborn wood, then he laughed with a gutty moan and split the city that night like a fugitive priest.
Byron Samedi in the incense backseat.
Get crowned. I had gone to move the rain that night, but being so out of sync like an island which breaks away from the main, I walked on the outside edge of the tower. It was burning. I stepped light behind the balustrade, was sudden death blow. I sat below and leapt. I went flying over the world with my eyes closed. I heard a DJ in the distance play Mr. C, but dub-wise, and the sound would blow around the valley.
Byron Samedi,
In the darkest of shades, white light can't touch his eyes. With the bull skull cane, top hat and tails, with knowledge of systems of sound, with knowledge of the dead, and the outer rim of spirit paths and stars. I'm on a mountain of fire. He say. My grandfather would kiss me on the lips. He grinned like Titsy Fly, biting in both eyes. Then he pulls and rears his growl. He says, I got about 600 man to pay Tony. Where I getting that money from? And then he up and bump rugged across the dust. And when he leaves, I cut my left hand off of the wrist and I put it in the fridge. My man told me,
not the freezer.
blood clot and corpuscle. Top of the fridge was where my tape deck sat in 1982, waiting to catch Casey Kasem with the red button. In the same shed, the old man kept his chisels and his hacksaw blades. I checked the minute hand, later they were cold. The fingers curled, I massaged the palm. I knew it would be better stitched, but my mouth didn't shut right. The doctor said he'd have to operate, fix my head, rebuild my gum by gum in plastic rooms with fiber optics, enamel, and after there was a knot of surgical wire on the left side, back of my skull. And now every time I open my mouth too wide, it pulls from the back of my throat. I worry that the cable might burst. But it was strong. I seen it done before. They use the same string for everything, even the universe.